What they got out there anyway, Ola?
Life, child, the beginning of a new life.
Just because we cross over to the mainland, it don't mean we don't love you.
Now you can leave the soil. This soil. Because we from the sea. We came here in chains.
When they go down in the water, they ain't never come up. And nobody can walk on water.
I need to know that I can come and hold on to what I come from.
A pass on us. You think you can cross over to the mainland and run away from it?
Never forget who we is and how far we done come.
My name is Julie Dash, and I'm from New York City, and you're watching Indigo Talks. My high school years were very different from most people who grew up in Long Island City in the Queensbridge projects, because I went to a special program. I went to Jamaica High School. So 5 people from my projects, we were all put on buses and trains, and we went out to Jamaica High School to a program called College Discovery. And it was, interestingly enough, while I was in high school is when I first started studying filmmaking, but not at Jamaica High School, in Harlem. The Studio Museum of Harlem at the time had a film workshop called cinematography workshop, and so I started going to the film workshop at the Studio Museum of Harlem, and that's where it all began. I think at that age and at that time, as a filmmaker driven by my passion to write and create and direct stories about women of color, and to change, as a filmmaker, my desire to change the way we see women of color or women from the African diaspora, how they're depicted in historical drama. I don't know if there was a lot of courage involved as much as there was passion to tell the story my way, the way I thought it needed to be told. Was I aware at the time that I was the first female to get a wide and general distribution of my film? The answer is no. I was not aware of it until afterwards, and people began telling me, because I knew I came up with New York filmmakers like Jessie Maple, who had a feature film called Will, and of course Kathleen Collins, who had the Cruz Brothers and Mrs. Malloy, and she also had Losing Ground. So I knew that there were other women out there making films, and I knew that I had seen those films in, like museum settings or small film festivals. So I had no idea that what the story was or behind their distribution of their creative work. So I didn't know until after Daughters came out that it was the first one. Of course, there was Barbara McCullough, Funmilayo Omakara, Alile Sharon Larkin, Monona Wali, Amy Halpern, and we all pretty much worked together on each other's projects. It was a fascinating time, and I'm really glad that I was privileged enough to go through that experience of working with so many people who had a passion for making film, telling stories, and who were very creative, like Barbara McCullough, for instance, who was totally interested in experimental film, and she eventually went into animation and became an executive at Rhythm and Hughes. animation company. Indigo was a plant grown and cultivated in West Africa, and they had a very difficult time of trying to cultivate that plant in the United States until they decided to start pulling in Africans who knew how to not only grow the plant, but also who knew how to process the plant. And we're talking about back in the colony, during the colonial period of America. And once they began doing that, indigo became such a cash crop that indigo and rice are basically the foundations of the economic success of the American colonies. They would process the plant, make it into a paste, and then send the blocks to Europe of the indigo dye, because most uniforms in the world were comprised of some form of indigo dye. They were blue. So for me, in Daughters of the Dust, I wanted to show the influence and the power and the politics and the economics behind this whole indigo processing. And also it was a way for me to show in a very different way the scars of slavery. So I had the elders who were slaves, once enslaved among the Sea Islands. The elders depicted in my film, I had them have permanent blue hands. And also Nana Pazant, who was resistant to change, she wore an indigo colored dress. And when the unborn child arrives to help sort out the problem between her parents, she has an indigo bow in her hair. So indigo is was integral to the colonies, to the story, to Daughters of the Dust as a thematic color that has resonance with the people, the economics, and the history. Film is a very powerful medium. The people who finance films, who greenlight films, who afford grants to films, I think they're looking for something that taps into pop culture. Some people who finance films and some people who distribute films want to be the ones to make the decision about what films are presented, what films get out to the public or shared with the public. So films, therefore, are very political. Every film that's made is a political act, and we know this. Daughters of the Dust was one of those kinds of films that people weren't quite sure of what I was saying, because it seemed to speak only to, a black audience, but that's not really true. I think it spoke to many people. But some people feared that it may just, speak to a black audience, and so they were not readily getting behind it. There are many different things that come to play when you're making a film that that goes against the grain of what a funding agency or studio or distributor might think is the story that they want to tell about a certain culture, any culture. Darnell Martin is someone we should keep our eye on because her films are always really, really great. Gina Prince Blythewood, Dee Rees, Nima Barnett. There are quite a few independent filmmakers and filmmakers working within the industry that are doing great work, and including Ava too. I do believe that Beyonce's Lemonade has ignited interest for young people in Daughters of the Dust, and so they've been talking about it and they want to see it, and now they're going to see it, and we've been showing it at various film festivals, and I have so many people coming up to me who are young, and they say, well, I wasn't born before, I was born after Daughters of the Dust was made, so this is the first time I'm seeing it. I heard about it. I heard about the visual references in Beyonce's Lemonade, and I wanted to see it, and I saw it, and so I think it's a wonderful thing because the film has a new life with millennials, with a whole new generation, and I'm able to interact with them, and they're able to interact with me, and I'm able to learn from them, and they're able to learn a little bit of history, some of the history that they never came across before, because television doesn't usually tell you the same things that films that coming from an independent filmmaker will make readily available to you. So it's I'm pretty darn thankful to Beyonce and Lemonade, and to Solange, her sister too, who who all of her work is I think we share pretty much the same aesthetic.
So can you tell me one of your favorite things you can remember about filming Daughters of the Dust?
Okay, one of my favorite things that I remember about filming Daughters of the Dust was we were on the beach, and the weather changed, and the clouds rolled in, and the sky turned magenta, and the wind picked up, and we changed the order of the scenes that we were going to shoot, and we shot something that was very impressionistic, and I call it the etiquette scene, where an auntie teaches the young girls how to get on board a trolley car wearing a long skirt, because they were used to island living, and she was trying to instruct them on how to do things and how to manage once they reach the urban cities.
I think Black Lives Matter is very important, and I think Black Lives Matters, hashtag Oscars So White, I think all of that has had an effect on the current inclusion that's happening in Hollywood. I was inducted into the Academy recently, along with I think it's like 750 other people. When you bring awareness to situations like the shootings and being excluded from the Hollywood machine, when you bring awareness to all of that, it's a good thing, and so I think that we need to continue that and not let it just go away. I'm currently working on a project about Verna Smart Grosvenor, a woman who was a culinary anthropologist, an NPR commentator, and an actor as well.
1950s in the United States would have had a very narrow range of possibilities for a young black woman. It wasn't a country that was ready for someone like her to be all that she could be.
In the early 60s, I got involved in the civil rights movement. And I hear, pow, 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 pow. Get out of the way, niggas.
Artists who were involved in the black arts movement were very aware of creating politically conscious work.
Concept of developing a black art that we did not have to imitate European culture.
Part of what they were saying is we have a culture and it is born out of the soul.
So she is using food to tell a story of a people.
It was a really refreshing thing for a person to be using cooking as a front for her activism, because she was very clear about who she was.
People always said, you need to write a cookbook.
I was very surprised that she had a book entitled Travel Notes of a Geechee Girl, because I felt she was telling the world that she was a Geechee. I had grown up believing to admit you were a Geechee was not a good thing.
Okay, one of my fondest memories of being in the Low Country when I was growing up I was visiting my grandmother's house on Percy Street in Charleston, and eating. It was always about eating and the food and the preparation of food. It was every meal was a big celebration. Every meal there was always rice being cooked, having been cooked in the refrigerator, whatever. But there was always rice. It was like such a big ceremony around the preparation of rice. If you tried to do something that was wrong, all the women would run into the kitchen behind you and say, you can't put a fork into rice when it's cooking. You can't put a spoon. Do not stir the rice. How many times did you wash the rice before you put it in the pot? Don't lift the top. It was a fond memory, but it was also, I learned how to prepare rice and not to mess with it while it was cooking, especially red rice. I have had my DNA done, and I've also had the fortune to visit Africa, to North Africa, Morocco. I lived there for a while, Senegal, South Africa, Casablanca. But my DNA reveals that I am of Congo, Cameroon, with a touch of Nigerian and a touch of Mali, and that's who I am. I don't know if I have a philosophy that I live by as much as be brave, be bold, and be passionate about your work, and no matter what, make your films. Make the films that you want to make.
One memorable thing from the film. It's something you don't see on the film, but it was surely memorable. We would arrive on the set sometimes before 5 in the morning, and it was still dark. And on Hunting Island, which is also a state nature preserve, you would see deer everywhere, like in every spot you could possibly imagine. Just deer everywhere, just was so magical. My name is Alva Rogers, and I portrayed Eula Pizam in Daughters of the Dust.